I remember it was 10 years ago. I was in second grade and I'm now a senior. I remember the event, 9/11. The teachers had ushered us into a classroom to look at a TV of an airplane hitting a building, and we saw people crying and upset, and I didn't understand why at the time. I have to admit, life has changed significantly in the last 10 years. Let's take a look and see what's been happening, what's changed today. 10 years ago, on September 11th, 2001, a group of terrorists called Al-Qaeda was an extremist group who was led by Osama bin Laden. These terrorists were ordered to fly to America and carry out a plan involving hitting 4 buildings at the same time. It was a clear morning on September 11th. There was between 16,000 to 18,000 people who were working or in the World Trade Center. The World Trade Center wasn't just one building, it was 7 buildings, with a very large plaza, with an underground building. It was a mall where people were shopping. But the most impressive were the Twin Towers. The Twin Towers that stood tall, 110 stories high. On that day, it was a perfect day, a nice day. People had come to work and were going to school and mulling about. There were people in line at the airport purchasing tickets, but no one knew that there were also 19 terrorists present. They were not noted. The planes flew out, and around 8:46 a.m., the first of 4 flights would hit one of the Twin Towers. The second plane would soon hit the second tower and cause it to crumble. As I watched, I saw one of the towers have smoke coming from it, and I thought something was gone wrong and something had been hit, and it looked bad. But within a few minutes, I saw smoke coming out of the second tower. I was working at RIT in food service at that time, and I had been preparing food. And there were many of my coworkers who started running around and crying and being upset. I didn't know what was going on. As a deaf person among all hearing people, I was kind of just isolated myself there. When all of a sudden my boss comes up and says, "I need to speak to you in private." So I follow my boss to see what's going on, and she shows me a TV screen, and I'm just shocked. It was the World Trade Center. They looked like they were ready to collapse. And immediately I thought, my family. I'm originally from New Jersey, and I have many family and friends who are in New York City. So when I saw this, I was speechless. I was dumbfounded. I froze. I started calling my mother and my father and calling everybody I could reach, everyone who I knew in New Jersey, to see what was going on, if they were okay. As the tower stood, 110 stories high, a plane crashes into it. The gas ignites an explosion, engulfing it in fire. The foundation and the trusses are weak. The building crumbles, and it leaves behind 17 floors of wreckage. I remember the awful feeling inside as you watched the towers crumbling, the fear of what was happening to all those people. And then, for weeks and weeks to follow, after 9/11, watching on TV and learning of the families and the children and the parents, and really grieving. In the morning, 9:37 a.m., the third airplane, Flight 77, would depart to the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. The people on the plane would all die, including 125 people who were in the Pentagon as well. There are 2 things that I recall that hit me the most about 9/11. One was where I was, and at the time, I was at Gallaudet University in 2001, and I recall seeing the plane coming down and hitting the Pentagon. You could see the smoke from our dorm, and at that time I started thinking, is it safe in DC? Is it safe in New York? And we had just watched live the Twin Towers crumble on TV. So that really hit me. The second thing that really impacted me was what was going on with everybody. My family grew up in New York. It was very close to home. The hit was very close to home. And I thought that could never happen in America. We're safe here. And I appreciate where we've come from that. That experience has made us closer, more united, more supportive as a whole. For me, it was very interesting and very powerful time of my life. I was working in Virginia at a public school and I was teaching ASL. The Pentagon was just a stone's throw away, 30, 40 miles from my school that I was teaching at. The parents of those students worked for the government, and my student parents did as well, in the Virginia and DC area. And that day, when the planes hit, there were so many of my students at the school whose parents worked for the government. We're in Washington, D.C., we're in Virginia. It was terror and chaos. It was a really amazing, powerful experience for me. I'm glad that my family's okay, but I feel for those people who suffered losses. I was at Gallaudet. I was taking a lifeguarding class. We were in the swimming pool. When one student comes down, you have an area of glass that you can see through students so you can be monitored. And this one student says to us in the pool that a plane had just hit. I'm thinking it's a small plane, insignificant as it happens. And as I left class, I went to the library, to the center. And they're all watching TV, and as I see, sure enough, the whole class is talking about what's happening. You could see the smoke coming from the Pentagon. We didn't know if it was true or not. We didn't know if it was accidental or terroristic. I will never understand or be able to explain that fear you experience with the Pentagon. I was a junior in high school, maybe a sophomore or junior, and they were taking these state standardized tests, but because I'd passed the test, they had separated out the group of kids who'd passed with the group who needed to continue the test. And all of a sudden, the teachers bring in this large TV, and they start telling us that a plane has hit one of the towers. The second plane hadn't hit yet. And we're watching, and we see the plane on the news hit, and everyone's just kind of shocked. During break time, we want to mix with all the students, but they're not allowing it because of the state standardized test. They don't want to disturb the testing, so we're sitting there and bearing with it, waiting. At lunchtime, they decide to hold the test for the day and let the students know what happened. The fourth flight, flight number 93, was 20 minutes from DC. On that flight were terrorists. The terrorists took control of the plane, and their plan was to crash it into the White House or the Capitol in DC. The passengers got wind of it from families and friends over cell phones. They got wind of what had happened with the World Trade Center and the Pentagon and the damage and deaths that have already occurred. And they learned that they were going to crash their plane into the government buildings. So the passengers took control. They apprehended the terrorists. A flight ensued and the plane crashed in western Pennsylvania. The passengers all died. We thank these heroes. We honor them for saving our lives and the lives of innocents. Thank you. I think what really impacts me is the change in our view on the world and globalization. I always thought of it as us and them, us and over there, not realizing how close we are. It made the world a much smaller place than before. I used to think the world was so big nothing could happen to us, but it happens to everyone. As the plane hit, the world immediately, I thought, would dissolve. And one of the things that I've noticed that here in Austin, I thought that was going to be an issue because your president was a Texas president. I was afraid we were next. And I was afraid that we had to look to see what other towns would be targeted. And it was very scary. I think it's something you always have to be prepared for. People say if you fight in the morning, you need to say forgive you before you leave because you never know when and what your last words of the day would be. Sure enough, before it's gone. 9/11 was the worst terroristic attack on America in the history of America. 3,000 people were killed from the 93 nations, 2,753 killed in New York City, 184 were killed at the Pentagon, and 40 were killed on Flight 93. This is a horrible thing. 3,000 innocent people died. That's very disconcerting. When you look at the people of the U.S., the teachers, the workers, the nurses, the doctors, the police, the firemen, who all came out in groves to New York City, thousands upon thousands, to support, to provide clothing, to provide food, to provide money, to provide everything that they could do to help and what was needed. We also recognize in America today by via US, just looking around, you'll see the flags in your work, in your schools. Everywhere you'll look, you'll see displayed the proud American. My cousin herself was a paramedic, so she was helping transport people to New Jersey to get them out, to get them safe. And when I asked my cousin about her experience, she'll never speak of it. Never talk about it. To this day, if I say, "Can you tell me a little bit about what was going on?" she refuses to talk. 9/11, I was teaching kindergarten in a public mainstream school with some deaf kids who were mixed in. And when we heard this, we shuffled the kids off into a private area, and the teachers watched. We watched, heartbroken, in fear, wondering later how we would explain to these children what had occurred. How would we tell them? Would we tell them the truth? Would we keep parts of it private? It was a very sad time, and we thought about how it impacts such young kids. And now those kids, I guess, are 10 or 11. They're growing up. They're living with those life lessons, and that was a tough one. For me, I remember 9/11. I was in second grade, and at the time, I had no idea what was going on or what it meant. I saw them talk about the smoke, but I said, so what? It was later after that my parents talked to me about the history, the cause, what came into 9/11. And there was one story that brings goosebumps to me. It was about a man who was blind, who had a seeing eye dog who helped him. The man was in his office working, and for no reason whatsoever, because the planes hadn't hit the towers yet, the dog felt something going on. He knew something was happening related to the airplane. So the dog began to pull at the man. He pulled the man, trying to encourage him to come, and the man wouldn't. And the dog kept doing this persistently until the man finally followed him. He got to the elevator, and the man wanted to get in the elevator, and the dog wouldn't let him get on the elevator. And he struggles, the man finally acquiescing. He goes down 68 flights of stairs. Can you imagine walking down, this blind man, 68 flights of stairs until he gets out? One blind man who's saved. That's just one story, it's amazing. 9/11 happened 10 years ago. It's part of our history. We should remember, but we also need to heal and move forward. New York City has that feeling. They built the Freedom Tower and the National Museum, the memorial, which is a waterfall that sinks in the reverse shape of the towers, the same place that the towers were engineered. Engineered just like the Twin Towers in reverse. It's a place for people to go, to relax, to remember, and to move on. And as you look, people feel relieved. Today, on the 10th anniversary, it's healthy for us to stop and to appreciate all of the freedoms that we have, the freedoms we have here. And we have to understand where our nation, the United States of America, had to fight for our protection and our safeties. So, for today, let's forget the terrorists and all of the negativity that was focused. And let's look at the positives and cherish our USA. All of the soldiers that have fought to protect our rights. Thank you. As I look back 10 years ago, it was a horrible event. We will never forget 9/11. We must honor those who have died, and we must honor those people who have worked to keep America moving forward with the right spirit.